Welcome to Engage with Digital. I'm Allie.
And I'm Marco with Prism Media.
So today we're talking about 5 tips to get you started with digital marketing.
Right.
So tip number 1, the first thing you should know before starting any of this is really what is digital marketing and why should you care? Mm-hmm. So digital marketing in a nutshell is really the opportunity to share your story through different mediums with social media, website, email marketing, all the stuff that we sort of touched on last week a little bit. But it's really just a way to build your brand and share your story and bring in new customers.
Yeah, it's important, when we think about the digital space, I think for so long people have taken advantage of traditional marketing advertising, right? I think of things like the phone book, the local church bulletin, even things like radio, TV, billboard, I would say are those traditional marketing, traditional advertising mediums. But to your point, digital marketing is all about taking advantage of that space where we can use the internet to really share our story. And when we think about why, I think it's important we answer that question, right? Why digital marketing? Why is it so important really to any business, not just an individual group or a specific segment of businesses, but why digital for every business? And the reality is that your customers, your clients, or even your leads or prospects that you're looking to attract, that's where they are. They're on social media, they're watching YouTube. Statistically speaking, that's where your target demographic oftentimes is, really regardless of age.
Yeah.
I think for some time we found that a large audience, when we talked about the digital space, most of the audience in that spectrum was really the younger audience, right? So when we think of the younger, we think millennials, Generation Z, even some of that Generation X. But what we're finding is with the work that we're doing, it's really across all spectrums. Baby boomers, you name it, that's where they're at. And that's why it's so important that digital marketing is part of your strategy. Is it's up to you to share your story, to tell your message, really build your brand in the place that your leads and or existing customers and clients, where they are.
One other thing, online shopping is projected to grow by over $4 trillion by 2021. So with that being said, the question really turns into why not? If there's that much opportunity, that much money being spent there is huge opportunity for your business to grow there as well, if you're able to take advantage of digital marketing appropriately.
Absolutely.
So now that you understand what digital marketing is in a nutshell and why you should care about it, the next thing you should do is really establish the right mindset. It's very important that you go into this with the right mindset of helping people and providing the right value rather than just running in and trying to sell to people.
I remember one of the first things that I experienced when I used to be in sales years and years ago. One of the first lessons I learned was from a higher level manager at a previous company I worked for. And he came into the room and he asked us all, these sales representatives, how many of you, by show of hands, how many of you like being sold to? And there were no hands that went up. And then he asked the question, okay, put your hands down. He then said, how many of you prefer to be serviced, right? How many of you like to be serviced and taken care of? Well, of course, all the hands shot up.
Yeah.
And really, that introduction to that mindset was so important because what he was illustrating was in that moment is that it's about providing value, establishing credibility, and building trust. And really, that's how you win over your client or your lead, is by providing some sort of value. So Allie, to your point with tip number 2, in really establishing the right mindset, is about providing value and not necessarily just jumping out into the digital marketing realm and trying to push or actively promote your product or service, because that's a sure way to fail.
Tip number 3 is knowing your audience. For example, 59% of adults aged 18 to 29 are regularly using Instagram. With knowledge like that in mind, it's crucial to know your audience so that you know really where to start and where they are.
This is absolutely one of those tips that I learned with a previous organization, and that's really having an understanding of your audience, right? So we talked about really having the right mindset. We talked about really just embracing digital marketing. But to your point, Allie, if I don't know who I'm trying to talk to or connect with, the reality is, again, I'm sort of set up to fail. Whenever we talk with clients, especially as we look at onboarding clients and building relationships and building strong strategies, one of the first things we do is look to build what we call personas, right? And we look to build a living, breathing person, who it is that we're trying to connect with, because it's so important that our strategy aligns to that particular person or segment's preferences. You mentioned Instagram, right? Mm-hmm. The reality is, you talked about that statistic of 18 to 29 and how much Instagram is part of their daily life.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to consider that when we look at different generations, different backgrounds, different cultures, different age ranges, even the difference between men and women, that there are different, generally speaking, there are different preferences in how we would want to target our messaging and even really sort of create the messaging to appeal to that audience. And I don't think it's about really necessarily painting with the broadest of strokes, mm-hmm. but if you know that a certain individual or a certain type of person you're really trying to attract is more engaged or is more attracted to a certain medium, not to mention a certain way that you're communicating that information, that's critical. It's an important step when you talk about digital marketing.
Definitely.
So tip number 4 is really having a strong website. And I can't tell you how important this is. And Ali, you and I agree mm-hmm. that your website should serve as your digital marketing anchor. It's that employee that really is working 24/7 to promote you and your business. Not to mention, today's website is really your digital storefront. So Ali, I want to ask you from a creative perspective. Obviously, you're an artist. You're someone that when it comes to aesthetic, not to mention you're on websites all the time, what are some things that are important to you from a consumer perspective when it comes to your website?
So the first thing that I notice just in my day-to-day is load time. Personally, if it takes a little longer for the page to load, I'm probably not going to wait for it to load.
Yeah.
So if I can't get it quickly, then I'm going to lose interest. After that, let's say it does load immediately, I'm looking for, aesthetics. Are the colors complementary? Does it pop? Is it too word heavy, or does it have just enough? Can I understand what the business does within a couple seconds? How does it look overall? Is it pleasing for me to look at? Is it easy for me to look at?
What if, I'm going to ask you a question sort of off the cuff here. Mm-hmm. What if you go to a website, maybe you've been referred to a business, a company, an organization, whatever it is, and you go to that website, and from an aesthetic perspective, things like colors don't match, or things like organization, really, it looks choppy. It's mm-hmm. very word heavy. As a consumer, what does that do to you?
It really turns me away.
Yeah.
Just from the beginning. In my mind, it sort of tells me from the get-go that they're not putting a lot of time into that, mm-hmm. and they're not updating it regularly. If things like that aren't up to date, then it makes me think they haven't updated this in probably years, because it looks so out of place.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, Ali, I think, in that your website needs to be the absolute strongest representation of your brand in the digital space, mm-hmm. because your website tells so much about who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And when we talk with clients and we look at helping them build their website presence, those are some of the first questions that we ask. Who are you? What exactly do you do? What services do you offer? Why do you do it? Oftentimes when I see business websites, whether they're for-profit or non-profit, if they're a company of 2 employees or less, or multiple employees, oftentimes when we look at that website, even when we go to the About Us section or maybe Our Story, it's hard to decipher the why behind this particular individual and why they're choosing to do this business. And the reason why that's important is because your why will connect and resonate with your audience. Tip number 5 is having a strong social media presence. Or maybe not strong social media presence, but some sort of social media presence. Ali, why is that important?
So once you have your website sort of figured out, most people in today's world, they're on social media for a good chunk of their day. So if your website maybe isn't getting the much traction as it could on its own, social media can really, really start to push that for you. And again, this goes back to knowing your audience. If you're sharing content regularly on the right platform to your correct audience, social media and website will go hand in hand, and they'll just sort of transfer back and forth as far as traffic goes. So it's incredibly important that you start building your presence where it's crucial, where your audience is, and where you can ultimately bring in more business.
Yeah, with your social media strategy, I think, Allie, you hit the nail on the head again, and that your social media strategy should very much complement your strategy with your website, right? At the end of the day, I think there's really two overall goals when it comes to a business engaging with social media. The first is, of course, to meet clients, customers, prospects where they are. So the fact that most of us spend a good amount of time on social media throughout the day, it's important to be part of that party, if I can say it that way, to be at the party. And to be, again, there when they're asking questions, when they're engaging in conversation. You want to be where they are. I think the second goal, and I would call this 1B to the 1A, is encouraging your leads, your prospects, your clients, your customers to visit your website. So that's what we call calls to action, right? And that's important that when we talk with our clients about building their social media strategy, that calls to action are a crucial part of what they're doing. With social media, it is about establishing presence. It's about, again, going back to one of our earlier tips, reinforcing value and really establishing that credibility and trust. And there's a number of ways to do that. You know, we here at Prism Media, we take social media very seriously, and we're very strategic with our efforts. Everything from planning out multiple days of posts that cover a number of different areas, to posting daily, to engaging in things not just like your page, but also groups and different opportunities, even to promote events. But at the end of the day, having some sort of social media strategy that complements your website and includes calls to action is super important. And that's our fifth tip with building a digital marketing strategy.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Engage with Digital. Again, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. If you found this video helpful, be sure to share it with your friends and colleagues. Let us know what you thought in the comments.
Yeah, please do. Let us know. Drop a comment below. If you're listening via podcast, we'd love to hear from you. We can be reached at create@chooseprism.com. And of course, all of our social media links are outlined right below. We'd love to connect with you. We'd also encourage you, if you haven't already done so, join us on Facebook. We have set up a private group that we called Engage with Digital. You can find that link right down below. And we want to be a part of your conversation. We want to look for opportunities to share tips, strategies, best practices. And again, if you'd like to get in touch with us, with Prism Media, you can. Please visit us at chooseprism.com. We'd love to hear from you. We work with a number of clients across a number of different industries. Again, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this journey as we look at ways to further share your story, build your brand, and most importantly, create your future.